What's going on? Welcome to the episode. Today we are talking about sugar and fat loss. Is table sugar the same thing as the sugar found in fruit? Is processed sugar more fattening than fruit? Do I work sugar into my clients' programs? And if so, how much? We're going to talk about this stuff among other things, so let's get after it. Is the sugar found in a Coca-Cola the same thing as the sugar found in something like an apple? Of course not. These are two very different things because the sugar in the soda is grown, processed down, concentrated, and then added to that specific beverage. Whereas the sugar found in a whole piece of fruit is a single ingredient whole food in its quote unquote natural form. Meaning it's got vitamins, minerals, fiber, all sorts of whole food goodies, whereas the sugar in a Coke is just purely refined sugar and nothing else. Also, it's worth mentioning that there may be other things found in whole fruit or just whole foods in general that science hasn't even identified yet. That is entirely possible because we often assume that we have all of this stuff figured out, but we actually don't. Nature is incredibly complex, and our nutritional knowledge is always evolving. We're discovering more and more about the nuances in nature every single day. Now, does sugar make us fat? The answer is it depends. If you overeat it, just like anything else, you can accumulate body fat as a result. However, let's break this down a little further and look at processed sugar versus the sugar found in whole fruit in regards to fat loss specifically. Processed sugar is far more likely to promote fat gain because it comes in a hyper-palatable package. For example, are you likely to eat more calories from gummy bears or strawberries? Obviously the gummy bears, right? Because they're not nearly as satiating as the strawberries. 10 gummy bears is 100 calories. That is insane to think about considering how tiny gummy bears are. On the other hand, you can have 2 cups of strawberries for that same 100 calories. It's a no contest in regards to what is going to fill you up more. In fact, the gummy bears might even stimulate your appetite, which sounds kind of wild. However, a lot of folks will identify with this. If you have 10 gummy bears, chances are you're going to want 10 more, and 10 more, and 10 more, and all of a sudden, a tiny handful of candy turns into 5. So let's say that you have 50 gummy bears, which might sound like a lot, but those things are really small. And realistically, 50 gummy bears is like 2 handfuls. You could have 10 cups of strawberries for the equivalent amount of calories. Now, someone might say, well, you could just portion control the gummy bears and equate for calories and avoid fat gain or even lose fat in the context of a calorie deficit. And in theory, that is absolutely true. However, in the real world, that's just not how things tend to pan out for a bunch of reasons. But the biggest one being, how long is it going to take you to feel hungry after 20 gummy bears versus 4 cups of strawberries? The strawberries are probably going to keep you satiated for a good while, whereas you might be ready to eat more food right after you chomp down on the gummy bears. If you're not ready to eat right after 20 gummy bears, chances are you're going to have a pretty significant blood sugar crash like 30 to 60 minutes later, and all of a sudden you're ravenous. And when you are ravenous, you don't want single ingredient whole food, you want something like a chocolate bar. You can see the snowball effect at play here. And this is why there is still so much confusion and debate around the calories in versus calories out concept. Calories matter. They are the deciding factor in whether you lose fat or not. However, our food choices have a huge impact on how many calories we eat. And so when folks ask, is a calorie a calorie? In a vacuum, yes, but we don't live in a vacuum. What matters more, quality or quantity of calories? And the answer is both. For example, if your maintenance daily calorie intake is 2,000 and you choose to eat 1,500 calories of just gummy bears, you will lose fat. But good luck maintaining that because you're going to be starving. Not to mention that your health is going to go to shit because you're going to be missing out on basically every essential nutrient that your body needs. Point being, you have to be in a calorie deficit to lose fat, but we also need to keep adherence and health in mind because eating 1,500 calories of whole food is so much more manageable from a satiation standpoint than eating 1,500 calories of highly processed food. So essentially, it's the same calorie deficit more or less, there are some nuances there, but it's infinitely harder to adhere to the 1,500 calories of highly processed food because they are not nearly as filling. And therefore, you're just going to be hungry all day long. And hunger is not sustainable. It's miserable. And again, we're not even delving in to the health detriments at play in regards to eating so many processed foods. Another quick example. A typical burger and fries at a restaurant is going to clock in at easily 1,500 calories. Probably closer to 2,000, but let's say 1,500 for the sake of our previous example. If you need to eat 1,500 calories to lose fat and you go eat a burger and fries, you're done for the day. And that burger and fries is not going to keep you full for 24 hours. But on the other hand, a well-formulated whole foods diet made up of 1,500 calories, you're going to be super satiated and you can eat like 3 really filling meals with that. Now, I include plenty of fruit in all of my clients' programs who like fruit. Occasionally, I'll get some clients that aren't big on it, but the ones that are, I'd say on average, we've got at least 2 to 3 servings of fruit in there per day. Some more, some less. It depends on the person, their priorities, preferences, etc. Can you eat too much fruit? Yes. However, it's kind of tough to do for 2 reasons. One is that it's just so filling and you sort of get to a point with it where you're like, I'm good, I'm full, no more, por favor. Secondly, your digestion will let you know because if you eat too much fruit, it will either bloat you and or send you straight to the bathroom. And so you're probably not going to make this mistake too many times. So it's almost like whole fruit has a built-in stop mechanism on it. Most whole foods do. You're only going to want so much steak, salmon, eggs, potatoes, veggies, fruit before you hit the point where you just don't want any more. On the other hand, how easy is it to overeat on things like pizza, ice cream, donuts, pastries, cereal, etc.? Refer back to the gummy bears versus strawberries example, right? You could eat 50 gummy bears, no problem, but you'd likely have a hard time eating 10 cups of strawberries. Same calories, completely different experience from a satiation standpoint. Also, you've probably noticed that I keep saying whole fruit, and that's because I don't recommend folks consume dried fruit or fruit juices because they are not the same thing. Dried fruit and fruit juice are a lot closer to the hyper-palatable processed foods end of the spectrum. For example, if you were to drink a tall glass of orange juice, it's not going to fill you up very much. But if you were to eat the equivalent amount of calories from whole oranges, you probably couldn't even finish them. The same goes for something like a dehydrated banana chip versus a whole banana. The whole banana is far more filling, so when your goal is fat loss, I'd recommend skipping dried fruit and fruit juices and go for fruit in its whole food form. Side note, you also want to be sure that the fruit that you're eating is adequately ripe, because you can think about this from an evolutionary standpoint. Unripe fruit visually isn't nearly as appealing to the eye, because as it ripens, it becomes brighter and more vibrant, and that's because it's enticing us to eat it. It doesn't want us to eat it unripe because the seeds in the fruit aren't ready to germinate yet. And therefore, the fruit is not only less visually appealing, it's also not nearly as tasty. Take an unripe banana. It's green, it's hard, it's tough to peel, it tastes super bitter and not sweet in the slightest. This is why. Unripe fruit also tends to lead to digestive issues because, again, the fruit doesn't want you to eat it yet because its goal is to pass on its genes. And when it's unripe, it's not ready to do so. As it becomes more and more ready, it becomes more and more appealing, sweet, and delicious to us. Now, some folks may say that it's not evolutionarily consistent to eat fruit year-round, but rather to eat it seasonally. And I think that there can be merit to eating seasonal and local foods. However, practically speaking, most folks just aren't going to do this because essentially we want our blueberries in the winter. If you want to eat seasonally and locally, I think that that's great. And if you live closer to the equator, you might even have seasonal and local fruit year round. But again, I just think that practically speaking, most folks just aren't going to eat seasonal and local all the time. Also, an important question to ask is, what's the alternative? For example, if someone finds that some whole fruit in the winter is just sweet enough to have them skip something like ice cream on a regular basis, that is a huge win because you're going to be far healthier and leaner if you favor the whole fruit versus the ice cream. So it's really important to look at the big picture in regards to all of this stuff. Personally, I eat fruit every day, as I'm sure you've seen on my social. It's really rare when I go a day without at least a few servings. And fortunately, right now I'm in Mexico, and so there is a ton of local and seasonal, delicious tropical fruits available, and I eat them. I'm just sure to keep my intake in check as far as my body comp goals go, but even more importantly in regards to my digestion, because I find if I eat too much fruit, especially fruit that's higher in fiber, my stomach does not like it. And so I just pay attention to this. So, all sugar is not created equal. Whole fruit can absolutely have a place in your fat loss approach, and shocker, you're best off to limit hyperpalatable processed forms of sugar as much as you can. And the real moral of the story here is single ingredient whole food for the win. If you're interested in applying for one-on-one nutritional coaching and or workout design with me, you can click the link in the description below or head on over to n1fitness.com/coaching. On Instagram, I'm at N1Fitness. On TikTok, I'm at the N1Fitness. And on YouTube, I'm at Marcus Sadu. If you'd like to, feel free to leave us a 5-star review on your favorite podcast platform, and be sure to hit the subscribe button. Thanks so much for tuning in. I hope that you found this episode useful, and I will catch you on the next one. See ya!